Thank you very much, Mr. Lulu, for the warm introduction. I always shy away when people read out my bio. It sounds like you're reading my obituary, but nonetheless, it's appreciated. Thank you for reading it that loud. I'm very also excited that even though you were breaking up, it will be shared for people who want to just read through it. Thanks very much, everyone who joined in to listen to this. I'm very excited that you have a pretty face, at least, not that of Professor Marwala. Leandro, maybe you might need to, edit this part so that he doesn't hear it. Otherwise, I'll be fired. But nonetheless, I'll also add that he is a leader, a leader of note in the fourth industrial revolution, very much humbled to lead, to follow such excellent leadership packed with so much humility. And I hope I'll do justice into presenting the insights. Of course, I'm going to present, in my own capacity, but as well as an employee of the University of Johannesburg under the leadership of Professor Chiledze Marwala. So I was asked to ask about an interesting topic. And the reason why I jumped in and accepted, and I think Professor Marwala knows, because my focus and passion is on SMME development. Of course, because I come from the information technology space, some people may ask, why IT, why SMMEs, how does that come together? Which reminds me of something that I want to share with you. When I started enrolling for PhD, I was asked quite various questions by the committees within the university to say, why do you want to do something that falls more into the business information tech, business management sector, while you are more into the information technology space? Because all of my qualifications are information technology, undergrad up until PhD. And I had to do quite a lot of motivation to educate some of my colleagues and peers to say that SMMEs are the backbone or the engine of the economy. So if you're talking technology, we should actually be talking it in the language of SMMEs. But again, the passion as well, it's coming from the fact that I was raised by what I call maybe a survivalist in other people who are not very kind to SMMEs. A survivalist, I'm talking about my mother, who was selling fruits, just at the corner of our house, and doing other businesses as well, trying to make means so that we can have food on the table. So I always teased my mother and say, just use a calculator. You see, my mother didn't go to school like myself. So I said, just use a calculator to calculate, and I will go further. When I came back doing my first year in university, and say, can you just try and use Excel? Just add and see how the tomatoes, and the apples, when somebody takes them, it will calculate all of that for you. Because I was passionate and very concerned about how much money she was losing as she loses foresight, as she's busy calculating and aging, and you could see that age is catching up with her, and of course impacting the business and negatively. So that's the whole thing, where there's passion of wanting to study information technology in the space of SMMEs. So I thought, let me entice you with that background, because it speaks to the passion that I have. It's not only professional, it's also very, very much personal for me. But just on that note, I think what is important, and I'm happy because today I'll be talking to small business owners. And when we say SMMEs are the engine for economic growth, we're talking about you in particular as a small business owner. So perhaps for me is, let me respond to this question by detailing what this thing is, the fourth industrial revolution. I always say to people, when you don't mention this word, you are not married to the University of Johannesburg. But along this term, the fourth industrial revolution, you may also have had another thing called digital transformation. And I'm sure that you also have now heard of buzzwords like your big data, Internet of Things, blockchain, machine learning. And obviously the pandemic has brought us closer to technologies with the introductions of lockdowns. We have seen many businesses, being forced to embrace, adapt or adopt these challenges in a very, very fast pace. And I think almost everyone, one way or the other, have used technology. I personally have primary school kids in the house, and I've never wanted them to own mobile devices, smartphones. But I found myself not having a choice. I had to adapt. I was disrupted in my own home. So you can think about yourselves as well as SMMEs, that how you were disrupted as well. So the key question, I think, is how far along is the implementation of these technologies, in terms of how much do they impact SMMEs today? And most importantly, how can your business benefit from this advancement that we're talking about? And I think that is key to respond to or to think about. However, let me do justice by providing a simple definition here of these buzzwords that are just threw at you. The Internet of Things, the fourth industrial revolution, digital transformation, digitization, all of those things. It basically means the integration of digital technology into all areas of your business. So fundamentally, you want to change how you operate. You also want to deliver value to your customers. It means quite the technologies, or rather the tools that will enable you to operate better between your suppliers, your customers, and everybody within the ecosystem as an SMME. But again, it also means a cultural change, which is very important for SMMEs, because it requires that you as a business owner, or your business in itself, it needs to continuously change the status quo. You cannot just be business as usual. You will need to experiment. You also need to be comfortable with failure, because the introduction of technology doesn't just come, at glorious all the time. You are going to have challenges as you deploy the technologies. But for some businesses, and I'm talking about SMMEs as a whole, be it medium, small, micro, it could simply mean you're automating your business operations, or it could also mean that your employees themselves, or you are simply moving away from the normal to the new normal, like I said. But wrapped in this or inside the digital transformation, it's a whole lot of innovation of ICTs, and I'm talking the information communication technologies, or either your 4 IRs. My kids will say apps, that's your applications that you find within the devices that you use. All of these technologies, that are seen as an enabler for the business, you need to just see which one do I deploy is the right one for my business, and what strategy do I need to use for me to make sure that I implement the business right. As I do the advisory service to the city of Joburg, one of the key things that we're also talking about there, or that we're trying to synthesize the people now, be it in private sector or public, or just businesses as a whole, is information technology is now playing a very critical role, where in the past you will have the Department of IT sitting there within an organization, and then you'll also have the CEO's office sitting up there. So there was just that space. But now it's a different thing, where you find the CIO, or the Chief Information Officer, needs to sit with the CEO at the same level, because this other one is driving business strategy, making sure that the business is successful. However, he or she will not survive with the CIO in terms of enabling him or her to ensure that they execute the business strategies in an efficient and effective manner. So this technologies is the same thing. But when we take it back to the SMMEs, which I normally train, most of my life, is you find that SMMEs somehow divorce themselves. So the owners, they divorce themselves from, being the CIOs, but they just see themselves as the CEO. There is just this, I'm running the business, and therefore these are not my things, or rather maybe it's the issue associated with, where do I start when I need to deploy these technologies that are so overwhelming themselves? So I think that's the challenge that we need to look at as small business owners, to say, how do we then tap into the space and ensure that we actively participate, because we are the engine or the backbone of the economy. So when you do all of these things of SMMEs on digital strategy or digitization, for me, it's about how do SMEs use technology to enable their business? And I don't want you to overwhelm yourself with the word or the terms, the fourth industrial revolution, because digital for one business owner may refer to going paperless, just like my mother who was doing the calculations of the tomatoes, the fruits on the paper, then it might mean that she needs to now transform and go to paperless. And that's digital transformation for her in that particular space. But another one might think a little bit deeper of technologies such as your fourth industrial revolution, etc. Like whilst others might picture it in agile teams or buying a smartphone or ensuring that they're accessing online platforms, well, all of this is using technology to remain relevant and to ensure that we access the market and we grow and be sustainable. And I know one of the key things that as SMEs we talk about is access to finance, access to market. And then some will say, don't tell me about the technologies. These are the two things that I need. However, how are you going to access the market in today's age if you do not deploy the technologies? And I think one of the main effects of the fourth industrial revolution, is increased human productivity. And as SMEs, and I'm talking now from the gender-based space, if I'm a business owner and I'm a female, there's quite a lot of things that I do, just like as a professional, female in the industry. There's other responsibilities that we know we carry. And the use of these technologies may actually improve our human productivity. Now, with technologies like AI and automation, augmenting our professional lives, we're able to make smart choices. And we can do that faster than we ever did before. So digital technology adoption is more like a conditional statement for me, It's because it depends on a variety of factors. And on top of the list of those factors is the responsibility of making the right decisions. And these decisions are made by all stakeholders, moreover by SME owners, because you are the key role players within your business. So if you don't understand the technologies as a business owner, you are actually operating at a very high risk, because us as experts in the IT space, we like to throw quite good terminologies, and the next thing you are lost in the lingo and you don't even know, what is this cloud? Is it hanging somewhere on cloud? What does it mean for me as a business owner? How do I benefit from that? So it's very important that at least we skill ourselves, we understand what these terminologies mean. I think maybe our passion, or rather what we advocate for from our spaces, at the university, is to make sure that we create a non-biased digital economy. And that includes SME owner. So all SMEs must participate, whether they are seen as formal or at the informal sector. So this technology thing is not only for the formal, it's not only for larger enterprises, it's for all of us. Then you ask, what do we do? What do we need to do to participate and ensure that we are not left behind? And which is maybe a question that many of us would be asking ourselves as SMEs. I think firstly, when it comes to South Africa, we know that it can never be a one size fits all. That's the reality of where we are. Our environmental setting alone gives it away. You have a small business owner operating in the township. And by the way, my PhD was on ICT adoption, Leandre, on SMEs that are operating in the township. So you can see the passion as well there. It was not just a general one, even though I do write on SMEs, whether they are formal or informal, but I have quite a specific interest in those that are operating in the rural and the township, because we're talking inclusive economy for everyone. So if you look at our environmental setting, like I said, we operate in different localities, and therefore we have our unique challenges. Of course, some of the challenges are common, but I think we need to own that, our own historical background and say, here we are in the digital economy, given where we come from. And I'm not going to go into the political topic of say it's been 22 years or over 20 years, we're still talking the same thing. things are advancing, and therefore, but we still have those localities, those environmental settings in our country. And it's very important that we look into them. So we have to generously admit that we are an unequal country. It's, you know, it's not that it's unacceptable to talk about it. We have to admit that. So if we look at the use of, for example, mobile devices, for example, that is your smartphones and your handheld devices that you use, the applications that I talk about. And again, if I delve deeper and say the machine learning, automation, all of that, they can allow customers to get what they want almost exactly at the moment they need it. So you actually are at the mercy of your customers in terms of what they need, because isn't it, we want to provide good service to our customers. So I take a customer of today and look at them, whether they're in the rural areas, the township, without going deeper into the challenges of ICT infrastructure. But a customer today expects to get immediate feedback anytime and anywhere. So I can demand a professional service with a larger enterprise while I'm in the bathroom, while I'm in my bedroom, and it can be either using any of my choice or technology choice, that is Twitter, email, chat, or I can do that just with a telephone call. But it must be instant, because that's what I expect. You know, you need instant feedback. So our customers also want personalized service. You know, you don't just want to walk into, and I always use a typical example of walking to a doctor's room and imagine my doctor that I've seen last week, and the next thing I come in the following week and they're asking me, what is your name? What were you doing here last week? That's just a 10 off, you know. It's just unacceptable for me as a patient, or see myself as their customer. You expect them to know. But then again, like my mother, who would age and kind of forget you bought tomatoes last week and so forth. And that's why we need to automate. So it's not really about replacing human beings with robots, which I think this is the overwhelming part. And especially for those that are in the construction sector, where they're thinking, oh, drones. When you mention drones, they don't see that as an enabler, a technology that's going to enable their sector, but rather you're going to replace. And those are the things that we can talk about and exhaust those conversations. But the reality is, you know, technology must be seen as an enabler for a business person. You know, your customers also want personalized service. You know, you want to walk in and make sure that the business knows about you. But as you grow as a small business owner, you know, it's not going to be easy if you have 1,000 customers. Just think about a salon, for example. If you are like me and you're doing your African hairstyle, and I walk in, I'm like, today I'm tired, I don't want to talk, just do anything on my hair. And you start doing all those yellow colors on my hair, I'm going to be very offended, because I expect you to know that I'm your customer, this is what you do. But as the business grows, those benefits might not actually happen. So I think what's more about these digital technologies, they have caused a shift in customer expectations, therefore making us gain or being beneficiaries as business owners of a modern buyer. Now, today's consumers are constantly connected. They are app native and aware of what they can do with what technology, because of the opportunities that rise using the modern technologies that we talk about today. And you can see I'm running a little bit away from just using the fourth industrial revolution all the time and just saying these are technologies that are emerging. You know, they are always improving. As when I was in the classroom, I was told about e-wallet. I was told about doctors that are going to operate you while you're on the other side of the country and they're on the other side. And for me at that time, I thought, wow, these professors in India are just taking chances. They are now selling us out. There's no way that this thing will happen. And I remember with my very own parents, when I told them, because, you always want to explain this in simpler terms that they understand. And they asked me, what is this IT thing? And one of the typical examples that I explained to them at that time, I was excited in first year, talked about e-wallet, to say at some point you're going to transact using your phone. And I remember my dad grilling his face and saying there is just no way that I'm going to transact, using a device and not seeing my banker. So that was very interesting. But to find that today, he's the very same person who will ask me, when are you e-walleting? When are you sending that money? So I think that's exactly what the fourth industrial revolution is doing to many of us. We find ourselves, slammed with these technologies right in front of our faces. But again, it's not that the SMEs have the luxury of choice here. And I'm saying this with great humility. You cannot just say, I'm not going to choose not to use certain technologies. And we've seen with the looting that has happened in the country, which was very embarrassing for me. But nonetheless, for me, I was thinking, oh my word, all these businesses that are being burnt out, I wonder if they have backup, I wonder if they've saved their information somewhere else. And this again talks about the issue of cloud computing and so forth. So if we note all of these diverse and unique packed challenges, such as ICT costs, skills, access to markets, etc., and I want to use a typical example again. I hope I'm doing a good work here as a teacher. So my vice dean for teaching and learning, if he's listening, he should be impressed or giving me marks whether I'm educating very well here. But I'll take an example of the SASSA card and say that if my aunt is in the village, because my parents grew up in a village called Asohopo, somewhere across towards Zanin. So if you are in that village, you don't have the privilege of your Spar, your Woolworths. And if you want to do Woolworths, you'll have to travel a few kilometers. And let's suppose that my aunt wants to use the SASSA card, to go and do shopping. Mostly they will travel hours if they want to get the Woolworths Apple, and I'm making an example here. And that is where most of our challenges are within the ecosystem. Because I'm thinking of that to say, what about the SME that is located in the village? Why can't I use that card to go and swipe in that small business in the village where I can just walk a few minutes? Or maybe literally just my neighborhood, it's a spaza shop that I can go and swipe that SASSA card. And I think we need to integrate these platforms so that we are able to enable SMEs to transact with their customers in their own areas, using all of these tools that we are having. And this is one of the things I want to see happening in my lifetime. It's obviously, you can call it a contribution, an obvious contribution to the economy, but it's something that I'm passionate about, and I really would want to see it happening in my lifetime. So, I mean, the reality is technology must be seen as an enabler. I've said this many times, but it's not a nice to have or a must have, not necessarily that. In simpler terms, you need to be fair when you look at the technology adoption or this fourth industrial revolution as a small business, whether you're in the formal or the informal space. And I'll give another example again, and say, if I ask my 8-year-old uncle, why must I buy you a smartphone or an iPhone? No, so let's say they're assuming that they want an iPhone. And then they say, but I just want to use it for WhatsApp. I want to make sure that I'm able to talk to, my mzukulu in my language is Mutlogolo, meaning your niece and nephews, via a WhatsApp video. Now, you get, why should I buy you an iPhone for that? Because the iPhone comes with quite a lot of applications inside. It's not only about how it looks, of course that counts, but it's also about the apps that you're paying. If you're not going to use those applications, then might as well get anything as long as you're going to get that. I hope you get what I mean when I say you're not just buying technology as a nice to have. There must be meaning to it. How are you going to use it to benefit your business? You get what I mean? So there are various factors to consider when deploying any technology, within your space. It's easier said than done. With projects across functionality and business boundaries, you can change how your business goes to the market and often fundamentally reshape interactions, with your employees or your customers. The truth is we will not benefit from the Internet of Things while we don't have the other things. You know, the other things are your ICT skills, for example, ICT infrastructure. For example, SMMEs in the rural areas or the township will not thrive in the digital economy. That is, realistically speaking, the farmer in the rural area may require a better tractor, you know, better management capabilities. The things are broad. We should not just focus on the digital skills as one point of entry to the digital economy. There are various actors that contribute to the success of digitalization or the digital economy. And they're either internal or external. And those are the things that we need to look at. So the digital technologies require infrastructures like electricity. I mean, we know that when there's load shedding, we are literally disrupted. We cannot just operate in this space when we are disrupted. But let me finish my talk with how do we get SMMEs to operate in things like your Africa Free Trade, which we know it was launched on the 1st of January. And here we're talking about e-commerce. And I think this is very critical as well, where we see most of the businesses are now thriving, especially in the African continent. For example, we have witnessed money market boom in Kenya, and the robust growth of e-commerce platforms in Nigeria. These good outcomes are often, confined to the domestic market and with limited regional access. And I think the digital trade and its benefits for development can be derived in two ways. And that's what I want to close in those two ways. Firstly is through e-commerce. That is the use of your digital platforms, which allows you to facilitate trade of your goods or your services, rather capable of both physical and digital economy. You want to create opportunities for your African economies to come through the increased connectivity of both local and foreign markets. And it's very important that we participate in that space. And the growing use of the internet in the country or in the continent, it's very instrumental in providing, an alternative route to market for SMMEs and entrepreneurs in general who were previously hindered by the lack of connectivity. And it now allows them high transaction cost and information asymmetrics, where e-commerce will offer entrepreneurs the visibility at a low cost, and businesses are increasingly being able to leverage on technology such as your social media platform, and they're able to also access market or advertise their products and services. So secondly, it's the digital trades. It extends the use of innovative technologies. Therefore, you are able to now enhance your overall economy efficiency and productivity. And I'm hoping that some of the policymakers, some of the leaders within the space, the Institute of Small Business, you drive this conversation to say the division of digital technologies in sectors of prime importance for African countries, such as manufacturing, agriculture, they could increase productivity and efficiency, making these sectors more competitive. For instance, the combination of Internet of Things, your big data, your cloud computing for precision of agricultural results in more accurate accurately providing us crop and weather monitoring. There's quite a lot of technologies that we can touch on in various sectors. But again, now, if we use the fourth industrial revolution or the technologies, we can gain wins because it can provide data which can be analyzed. And I'm going a little bit deeper now with the 4IR things, which can be analyzed to inform farming process and decisions if we look at the farming sector. Or rather, furthermore, you can look at productivity and efficiency in manufacturing, which can be increased by automation. So let's look again on robotics, the 3D printing, and all of those things. So you can automate that and they can actually increase your productivity. I mean, if we increase or the increase of the digitization in manufacturing will intensively, obviously, increase the demand of ICT services and your business services, now which are also intermediaries in the production process. Perhaps the key question, and I'm going to close now, is that how do we then get SMMEs to benefit and how do we unpack this fourth industrial revolution for SMMEs? And you can do that quite in a lot of ways that you look at it. Of course, I've unpacked the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution for SMMEs. I hope I did a good job in that. But nonetheless, there are other things that we need to be aware of. And these are not only challenges that affect SMMEs, larger enterprises. It has been mentioned that I serve as at the CEDA board, which is an agency or an entity of the Small Business Ministry. But, you know, one of the things that we also talk about, which is that divorce that we see as well, even from larger enterprises, is the investment of cybersecurity softwares. You know, you need to actually pay attention to cybercrime, because the more you operate in the digital space, it's like a hotspot. You know, when you are driving a car, the police will normally tell you this is a hotspot area, and therefore you need to make sure that you put measures in place to ensure that that area, you know, you decrease or you protect your space. The same thing in the digital space. As you automate, as you use your smart devices, there's also issues of cybercrime, which are very much fashionable today within the era of the digital economy. So it's very important that you also invest in the right technologies and protect your business, because you don't want, you know, they say data is oil, data is the machine. So you want to make sure you keep your information. It's a challenge, it's a topic on its own. But within the Department of Applied Information Systems, we also, you know, planning to construct some of the short learning programs for, particularly for SMMEs. We have done it for cloud computing. We've tailor-made it for strictly for SMMEs and say, here's cloud computing, you go and test it, we give it to you, go practically and use it and come back and give us a report. How did you find it? How does it benefit your business? So those are the kind of education that we need to bring to our SMMEs so that they are able to fully participate in this space. And maybe the most important thing is, what is the type of support that we need? And I think if we look at maybe the medium, and I'm hoping that maybe we have medium enterprises here who are planning to be larger enterprises or possibly being larger enterprises because of the opening of this digital economies. And then I call them the established knowledge-based businesses. They probably are reaping the benefits of looking at, such as making use of big data and analytics for market analysis, you know, and searching for their customers. Making use of big data analytics, maybe speeding up digital transformation or taking advantage of technologies such as your cloud computing, and most probably investing in automation to expand production and marketing. Now, all of this can be overwhelming for an SMME, you know, who is just starting, or maybe they're just starting to use Excel. Remember, Excel is an application on its own. And that's why I said, you know, before we overwhelm ourselves with the fourth industrial revolution, let's talk about the basic IT skills. Your applications, such as your Excel, how do you use that, you know, to benefit your business? Your financial applications that you can use to automate, you know, to generate invoice and all of that. And these are the technologies that many of our SMMEs are not using. However, on a positive side, there are opportunities, of course, you know, for SMMEs in the fourth industrial revolution, despite all of the headwaves that comes along with 4IR. And the advantages that can be deployed to help overcome challenges and drive innovation in the 4IR is that, you know, the single defining feature of an SMME, remember, is that you're a smaller size. It means whether you are small, medium, or micro, you are small in terms of your operation, your structure. Therefore, it allows you to react faster to the market. Unlike with larger enterprises, you know, they have to still look at the structure. Some of them, you know, they don't have the flexibility that you have as a small business owner. And I think it's very important that we look at that. And again, I want to finally, Deandra, I promise I'm closing this with going back to the definition of a digital transformation. And this is summarizing, you know, the whole thing. If you could take anything, is to take the definition of digital transformation in the context of a consumer, that you are serving. It's simply about changing the way business interact with their customers, how they provide their customers with consistent experience whenever they and wherever they want it. So if you look at the Gartner findings said that digital transformation is among the top 3 priorities for enterprises, top 3, and their space reflects this among the 2019 findings of the IDC, where they projected that spending on digital transformation will top up to $1.18 trillion by the end of 2019, and we are in 2021. If we take an example of targeted advertising again, which is something that is currently happening to us. And I mean, you think of a particular brand item that is spying on you. You probably experience shopping online, and I do a lot of shopping of shoes or kitchenware. And for instance, all the kitchenware items will just all of a sudden pop up, following me wherever I go on the internet. It's called targeted advertising, but it feels more like digital stalking. It's like somebody is stalking me and I cannot escape. And such tracking technologies are becoming more sophisticated, and brands can now access consumer data and personalize it, to their advertising based on the consumer's online behavior or purchasing habits. Like I said, it's all about your customers. How do you provide them with service? Think about that doctor example that I gave you and my hairstyle, my hairdresser example. So targeted ads proactively will create a need you didn't realize that you had. And sometimes it seems as if the advertiser is reading your mind. To simply answer your question of how digital transformation will help a business to understand you in many ways than one. It can also assist in retaining your customers. It can also contribute positively to good customer relationship. So I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to deny people to ask questions and also to make their comments. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that I did a good work in terms of unpacking the 4th industrial revolution in the context of digitization for SMEs. Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. And you really did a good job. I will not share the unflattering remarks with Professor Mararola, as long as you give me a certificate of attendance for today. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. We've got a few questions that have been sent by the audience. I'll sort of weigh in with my 2 cents worth of questions. So Mr. Moloi says, will technology in the foreseeable future supplant or supplement human beings in the business terrain?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I've already touched on that in my closing, also in some of the key pointers that I've touched on the tools, seeing technology as replacing human beings. It's a topic on its own. It's got its own definitions, it's got its own context. Of course, there are areas where they are going to be seriously disrupted. And I'll take a typical example of McDonald's. I don't want to take huge, overwhelming 4IR examples. If you look at McDonald's as a retail, if they introduce those smart machines or tools where you can actually go and choose what you want to buy, an item that you want to buy, it brings the flexibility of saying, I can actually build my own burger. I can actually go and click there. Whether sitting at home, I can do that on my smartphone. And therefore, it means that I'm creating my own menu. What about the chef who's supposed to do that? So you are going to obviously want to replace someone there. However, we just cannot say that we will completely replace human beings in other areas. And hence I said, let's look at technology as an enabler. Of course, the labor relation issues that come in. Someone said to me, who is going to pay tax when you bring in a robot? That's another question on its own as well, and which I think it's where policymakers need to come in. So this thing, it's an ecosystem that all of us must look at it and say, how do we then make sure that, as we are being disrupted by these technologies, how do we bring balance to ensure that as the engine for the economic growth, SMEs, we still continue contributing into that space. So I'm running away from literally say that, yes, robots will replace at some point, but I'm also refusing to say at some point my husband will be replaced by a robot and I'll marry a robot. You know, I still prefer him as he is. So that's the bringing balance into defining the robot coming in to replace human beings.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vuma. I've got a question from my colleague, Hetien. Despite the advantages of implementing digital tools, many small businesses are lagging behind in hopping on board with digital transformation. How can we advise entrepreneurs to dive in?
Yeah, I think that the very first and foremost is to acknowledge that we are disrupted. Either way, we need to tap into the space. And as an SME owner, the first thing that you would need to do is to ensure that you talk to your team if you have a team. If you don't have a team, in most cases, you are just a sole owner. You yourself, you must see yourself as, remember that alignment I spoke about, the CEO and the CIO. So you yourself have to equip yourself by understanding these technologies. That's the first thing. So if you have a team, all your team, remember these technologies that you bring, a user somewhere has to use them. And if you're going to bring a technology that users are not going to understand, and you're not going to invest in training for your users, you're not going to fully utilize them. You know, and when I was doing my PhD, one of the things that I found, and I literally was walking the street of the township asking SME owners, and the reason why I did you know, one-on-one, instead of just relying on literature or collecting documents, I really wanted to get empirical data from the SMEs because of their diverse nature, was to ask, you know, an SME owner, interestingly, are you using technology? That was the first question. And then they will be holding a smartphone on the side, and they will be also holding a tablet on the other side, and there'll be a desktop as well in the premises. And then they will say, no, I'm not using technology. Wow, weird. Why are you not using technology? Well, because it's for larger enterprises. Well, in the mindset, they're thinking for our Internet of Things, cloud computing, all of those things, I don't have an IT department and therefore I don't use technology. Meanwhile, they're actually holding technology in their hand and they're actually using the technology. But also deeper when you ask is to find that they are not fully utilizing those technologies. And I think that's where we need to bring balance by educating and providing the ICT support to the SMEs to say, even if you are using this smart device, do you know the capabilities that it carries and that it can bring to your business, that it can assist you to access the market, it can assist you to advertise, to communicate with your customers. And I think that's where the expert needs to come in and provide that support. That's the second part. And I think lastly for SMEs is to acknowledge that you know, it's an overwhelming space, and it is overwhelming also for us as ICT expert to say, how do we then go and leverage on the support that is available there? We talk about the likes of CEDA. You know, CEDA provides support of the mentoring of the business. They also support on the mentoring of the technology adoption. Your institution as well, you know, the Small Business Institute, they also passionate about, you know, providing this support. These entities, it's an ecosystem that we must bring together, you know, together with Higher Institute of Learning. And you'll be surprised that even the private sectors, many of them, they are actually providing support to SMEs. So the idea is to bring all of those things together and to ensure that we don't fold arms and we just actively tap in, even if it's a very intimidating space. But, you know, you fix as we continue, we'll make a lot of mistakes. I did touch on that we are going to make mistakes, but as long as we are tapping into it, because folding arms, unfortunately, it's not going to help us because technology is not slowing down. It's really moving at a very high speed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think you've also answered a question from my colleague, Winda, who's the president of our chambers, about the common mistakes that are made by small businesses. And I have a question from Bati Daya. Are SMEs ready to take up the digital transformation, especially those that are a one-man or one-woman businesses? And what are the practical tools for SMEs to take up digital transformation? Thank you, Dr.
Thanks. That's a very easy one. SMEs are at a very high advantage. I've already touched on it in terms of technology adoption because of how they are defined. In simpler terms, you know, the German definition says they are just defined as small businesses. Of course, there's no single agreed definition of what an SME is. And we're still struggling, even us as experts who are writing about defining an SME. You can think about it in South Africa, it's even more complex. How do you define an SME operating in the township, one operating in the city, you know, one operating in the rural areas? And we know that our ministry tried very much to simplify it by bringing the new definition using two proxies, which is your annual turnover and the number of employees as compared to what we had in the past. But just to answer it is yes, they can. And it all boils down again to the question of what are the technologies that are right for your business at the stage where you are? So we're currently doing training in the university. Within the department, we have the School of Consumer Intelligence and Information Systems, that is within the College, of Business and Economics. And we have housed the Technopreneurship Center. And I see Mr. Mabukela is here, who's the head of the Technopreneurship Center. You know, one of the things that we did there was to say, look at the business, you know, because they house various businesses and they bring in industry experts, academia together, and the students, you know, to develop solutions for the business. Look at the business first before you bring them the technologies. And I know he will be nodding and laughing because he's a computer scientist by profession. And I always say, don't bring this computer technologies here and confuse my SME. You need to understand the business owner first. Who is this person in terms of where are they coming from? What drives them to contribute to this business? And then understand the business. It takes quite a lot of energy from an IT expert to go and tap into that world. But that's what you need to do as an SME owner, to explain to the technocrats that this is what my business is all about. And this is how I do my business. And then they can come in and enable your business. Some of the things are simple as your website, integrating your WhatsApp on the website so that when a customer clicks on the website, they see your WhatsApp, they can just click. If I prefer WhatsApp, remember we said customers can choose what they want to communicate with you. So I click there and then it will take me straight to WhatsApp. I'll be able to do that. Such on social media platform, you know, because as you go on social media, I don't want to be confused sending you a message and you don't respond. Of course, there are technologies that we can use. You just need to get the right one. Strategically, make sure that you align your business strategy with the technology to enable you. And then we move along as we adopt all the technologies are emerging. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I've got a very strange question here, which has just come through. How can predictive maintenance be improved by AI in the railway industry?
Okay, that one needs Professor Marwala, but I'm going to try and respond to it. I think when we look at technologies such as your predictive analytics, you know, it can benefit various sectors. In the railway industry, I'm just thinking that if you think of it just like in the vehicle industry, you can predict how many trains are going to pass on a particular station, what are they carrying, what are they bringing, import and export. So if you think of predictive analytics, for me, it's simpler terms, it's giving you rich data that you can use to inform how you make decisions. You know, how are you going to manage that particular space in the industry? So it's another technology, of course, that falls strongly within the fourth industrial revolution using machine learning and so forth. But predictive analytics or technologies are literally telling you what needs to be done. And when I was doing my undergrad, you know, I was given a project to do about ERPs, enterprise resource planning. It speaks exactly of the lines of your predictive analytics. And I'll explain my project just to kind of cover those that are a little bit lost here. So if I give birth in the village where my parents grew up, and I have my son, obviously they're getting born in the clinic. That's data. It's Botlari born on this date in this clinic. And therefore that information is stored there. Now you take the information again, you obviously know if he's born in this year, it means that by the time he goes to primary school, he'll be so many years of age. And therefore we are tapping again into the space of education. So the Minister of Education will need that information to say, okay, that means that by the year, so assuming that there's 20 Botlaris that are born in that particular year, you'll take that same data and say, that means in this year, as the government will build so many schools. And then you move again to say, by the time they finish high school, they go to universities. It means as a country, we can predict, we will have so many students that needs to get access to higher education. It goes further, to say, by the time they go get their license, you already know your system is expecting so many kids who will be 18 years old at this age to predict, it kind of predicts for you, and then you can make good decisions. And I hope those that are not in the industry of trains, they're able to get this enterprise resource planning, which goes back to my explanation of digital transformation. What exactly does it mean? Is the integration of all these technologies so that you're able to make sense and benefit the business as a whole. Thank you very much.
Very much, Dr. Vuma, and thank you very much for all your very insightful remarks today. I feel almost like an expert as long as you send me my certificate of attendance. All that remains for me now, I see we're just 4 minutes away from the closing of this webinar. If you have any closing remarks, this is the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me in closing it will just be to summarize some of the things that I've already spoke about in terms of technology adoption. Why is it important that SMEs must adopt? And I also want to just highlight on a little bit of a few stats, just to synthesize whoever is the small business owner to say, if we look at the net global spending on digital transformation now of 2018, and I'm deliberately going far from, the pandemic time, it was approximately at $1 trillion US. And this number is expected to increase to more than $2 trillion by 2022. In fact, 79% of businesses have already admitted that COVID-19 has increased their budget for digital transformation. However, despite all of this, we are far from complete digital adoption as SME owners. And I think it's very important that we do whatever it takes, and institutions like yourselves are very important in playing that critical role, to bringing all of these things as an ecosystem to say, how do we ensure that, we are more operating as knowledge-based businesses. In other words, we are able to use big data analytics for market analysis. We are able to speed up the digital transformation. We are able to take advantages of technology such as cloud computing. We are far behind in terms of catching up, but I think we are doing well. And I really want to recognize the ministry, the leadership of the government in this country. Despite all of the challenges, I really think we are trying to say, here we are as South Africa, acknowledging the commission that was set up by the presidency. I hope that we are reading all of that, because SME contribution was also plotted in there, which shows how serious we take our SMEs. It's very challenging. The ministry with all its entities, the CFA and the CEDAS and other ecosystem in this whole thing of supporting SMEs. We're trying, but we have a huge market to support, but we can only accelerate that when there's also appetite from SME to say, we are tapping into this field, whether we know it or we don't know. All of us, we're just going to participate and make sure that we don't leave everybody behind, particularly the ones in the rural and the township really needs to be part of this, because the informal sector is also a huge contributor into the economy of this country, because we need to address the challenge of unemployment. It's a very, very painful thing to see that our numbers are just growing and not going down. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vuma, and thank you very much for stepping in to save the day and replace Professor Marwala. Like I said, we have just postponed Professor Marwala to next year, We'll have him early next year. But we feel very enriched with your insights today. My colleague Leandre has just posted your details. So members of the audience are free to engage with you directly, but we have recorded the session today, so they can always go back to it at a leisurely pace and time. Let me thank everyone for attending and making time to be with us today. This is our final one for the year. We will be back next year with more webinars, including the one with Professor Marwala. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Vuma. Thank you very much. Stay safe. For those who are traveling, please observe all the COVID protocols. We are hitting the 4th wave, and let's try and be safe. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.
Cheers.